So I trust you had a good time yesterday with Mr. Peters. I have a nickname for him, which I'm not going to share with you. But the stuff that you were doing yesterday kind of matches and lines up with what we're doing today and then what we're also going to do on Monday. So we're going to look at the rise of the Nazi power and the aftermath of World War I, and then the actual rise of Nazis and when they actually come to power. So, Connor, can you tell me the aftermath of World War I? What time period are we talking about?
1919
And it's when Hitler actually comes to power, so what year would that be, Jenna? Can you help her? Yeah, Killian?
33.
Yeah, 33. So we're talking the time period 1919 to 1933. In that time period, what are some factors in trying to understand how the Nazis came to power? So I think yesterday with Mr. Peters, you finished watching, or you almost finished watching the World War series, which chronicles some of the key leaders in the interwar period up till the start of World War II, and did some stuff on successor states and the mandates. So it kind of fits in the time period we're talking about. And if we go back just a couple questions about World War I and the end of World War I, Claire, what was the peace treaty of 1919 that punished Germany for starting the war?
The Treaty of Versailles.
Yes. And Josh, don't let me down, but who were the big three at the Treaty of Versailles?
The Tiger,
Who was he?
the Car Charbot, something.
Okay, you really just butchered his name, but so yes, the Tiger from France.
You got Lloyd George
David Lloyd George from Britain.
and Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah, Woodrow Wilson from America. So it's in this context we're talking about the rise of the Nazi Party. So for 45 minutes today, we're going to do a bit of a journal entry or a journal prompt. You have something on your desk. We're going to work with that in a minute. And we're going to answer two questions which are actually written on there. And I'll explain that when we look at the actual picture. We'll make reference to that survey that I had you fill out, which is a pre-lesson survey. And then on Tuesday, we'll go back to it after we've done Monday's lesson, because the intent is that survey you filled out is prior to this lesson, and then after this lesson, your understanding, your knowledge of these particular topics should be different from what we did the survey with on Thursday. And then we're going to look at 4 documents that are on your desk and try to come up with a common theme, and that theme will relate to the rise of the Nazi Party. So what are 4 factors in the rise of the Nazi Party? And then going to watch a bit of a documentary, which is the basis of this lesson in of itself. Any questions? Okay, so on your desk you all have a sheet that looks like this, and there's 2 question prompts on there. So you want to take this sheet out. We're going to spend about 5 minutes looking at this document, analyzing this picture, and then we're going to talk about these 2 things. So I want you to explain what you think this particular photo was about, and then explain how you think this could have happened. So you have a bit of an indication given what the title is, but just spend 5 minutes on your own talking about this image, or writing down about this image, the thoughts you have with regards to those 2 questions. Mark, set, Giver. So you're kind of going at this picture blind because you don't have the context of when it was, where it was, really who's in it, but you're just looking for clues in the picture. Again, the title, Understanding Nazis' Rise to Power, should give you a bit of an indication of somewhat of the context, or the post-context of this picture. So maybe let's just start with the first one together, or the first question says, explain what you think this photo is about. So even before that, maybe we'll describe some of the characteristics that are actually on this photo. Then I'll tell you where this photo is actually from. Nick, talking about this photo, what do you see in here?
I don't know for sure, but it kind of looks like one of the guys has a tattoo right here.
Well, and you're farther away, and it's not kind of, you're right. And actually, if you can see this picture in its entirety, this picture is from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, and it's part of a collection of pictures, well, not a collection of pictures. There's people with arms, and all you see is arms, 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 like this whole mural of arms with tattoos, and this one's kind of in the actual center, and this puts a face to those who are tattooed. Obviously, then if they're tattooed, they're victims of the, yeah, nothing gets by you. Okay, Connor, what else do you see in here?
The one guy on the left,
So this guy over here?
kind of remorseful, and he doesn't look like he has a tattoo, or does he have a tattoo?
I'm sure he does, because it's part of the whole thing, and it's right here. It's kind of hard to see from back there. He looks remorseful. What else can you describe this guy? Anybody?
He looks sad, like he lost.
Yeah, sad or lost, and that's what I had written down as well. And actually, if you look at the faces, not all the faces are saying the same thing. So how would you describe those other 3 faces? Jacob?
Well, the guy like the farthest corner looks the most
This guy?
scared, sort of thing, like above him.
This guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks what, sorry?
he looks kind of like stern, like he doesn't really, he's not like faltered too much, but
Yeah, perhaps he looks very kind of aggressively
Yeah.
still angry without saying anything. Yes, Jared?
I think the two in the middle are kind of like stalwart, like they're holding their arm out as if like a shield. So I don't know, maybe it's representative of how they've withstood so much over the years.
How they wish?
How they've like withstood so much.
Yeah, and I would also say maybe like they're like a form of defiance, just holding out like, haha, sorry, actually we survived. I asked my 7, 8-year-old what they looked like, and he said, well, he said this, they didn't look like Hitler. Whatever that's supposed to mean. So in reference to this context right here, didn't act like Hitler, and then he said, well, what's on their arms? And I explained to him what's on their arms. He's like, oh, kind of like what happens to cattle. I'm like, I guess it's a simple way of putting it. Okay, so can you tell me about the picture, Emma? So who are they then? Obviously, we've already mentioned this, but
Yeah, these are victims of the Holocaust.
yeah, victims of the Holocaust. And the actual caption for this reads, portion of photo mural depicting Jewish Auschwitz survivors from Salonika. I can't pronounce it properly. I looked it up last night. That's Greece. So these are Greek Holocaust survivors showing their tattooed arms on the 3rd floor of the permanent exhibition at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. Did I tell you I went to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum a couple times? Yeah. So it represents what? The aftermath, obviously, of the Holocaust, and then some factors why you think this actually could have happened. So Tates, how many people actually died in the Holocaust? How many Jews died in the Holocaust? A lot. Is there any the actual number? Yeah?
6 million.
Yeah, 6 million. This is something we're going to get to at a later date. So today our lesson is looking at understanding the rise of the Nazis. So it kind of leads us to the conclusion, no Nazis, no Hitler, no Holocaust. So we're going to be focused on how the Nazis actually come to power. And then the second question, how could this have happened? Do we have any idea how this could have happened? Some factors behind how the Holocaust happened? Jared?
Well, obviously Hitler is control of the country.
And it's wouldn't be Hitler alone. What's another factor? I mean, this is kind of beside what we're doing here, but yes, without Hitler, the Holocaust likely would have happened. What else are factors behind it happening? Yeah?
Like the Treaty of Versailles had such tough penalties on Germany that kind of the people like needed a way to get their economy strong again. So.
And you touched on 2 of the themes that we're going to talk about. And I want to tell you what they are because we're going to come to them in a second. But you touched on 2 of the themes, and we made a list of 10 things or 10 terms that were dictated to Germany at Treaty of Versailles. Were they happy about any of them, really? And what would you say the 2 biggest those terms were we talked about? Yeah?
We had to take blame for.
Yeah, war guilt clause, clause 231, which said that they were solely responsible for starting the war. And then, yeah? Yeah.
The coal thing, or they have to go.
Right, so they had to give up the access to the Saar Valley region. But another one financially, because you talk about economics, you remember that? Yes?
And to pay $35 billion.
Yeah, $33 billion in reparation payments. So that's going to lead to another problem in the 1920s, hyperinflation. But actually, I was looking for something else. So that Hitler plus this are 2 of the key factors in the Holocaust actually occurring.
Anti-Semitism?
Anti-Semitism, which is the hatred of Jews. And did Hitler invent anti-Semitism?
No.
No. The long-standing is referred to as the longest hatred. So those are 2 factors behind the overall thing. And then how it actually plays itself out are things we're going to look at. Because the Holocaust doesn't just happen. It takes time. It takes a sequence of events. The Nazis themselves don't even know how they're going to play out the Holocaust until it starts playing itself out. And at the back of the room back there above Nick and Alex, you can see we have that pyramid of escalation. Those are different stages or steps that goes through. Starts with stereotyping and racism and ignorance and intolerance and, like you mentioned, anti-Semitism. Then it works its way up. In the end, I don't know if you can see the top stage there. And in that pyramid, there's actually 6 stages, which is kind of ironic because there's actually how many killing centers? 6. So we're going to explore these two particular questions with regards to that. And this is kind of where we're going or where we're headed, but before we get there, we're just going to look at this key point here. So this is, again, the survey that I had you fill out, and these are 4 particular questions that I'm going to re-ask you at the end, and hopefully by the end you're going to have a better understanding of the factors in the Nazis' rise to power. Okay, Okay, so on your desk now, between groups of four, maybe you two can go back here, work with Cal and Killian. You have some images. There are 4 different images put together for you. And just, I'd like you to spend maybe 5 minutes talking amongst yourselves. There's only one photo set between you, but try to figure out what these pictures are saying with regards to a theme, because we're looking for 4 different themes in the Nazis' rise to power. So each of this is telling a different story. And I want you to talk amongst yourselves, look at the caption, what it says below, try to find the context of what's going on, who's in the picture, what they're doing, or what's in the actual text, which kind of gives you a clue to factors in the Nazis' rise to power. Okay, so I'll give you like 5 minutes to work on that. Maybe you guys can both back right there. You hear what I'm saying there? So, collectively. Pardon me?
Hi guys. Playing London.
Yeah, but that's what the event is, but what this has been in reaction to. So what had happened? Who surrendered? Yes. And then that was called when they surrendered. The armistice, November 11th, 1918. Treaty of. Were they happy about it? No. He felt that it was a betrayal. He felt it was a stab in the back. So this might be a reaction to that. What was that? Okay, so let's look at the first 2 together, and they're pictured up here for you. So the picture on the right, the caption should be a bit of a clue, and some of you are getting it, some of you might not. Is that this event, the beer hall push, as we talked about, takes place in 1923. So it's not the event that I'm actually asking you to look at, it's what caused this event to happen in the first place. Because this is an attempt by Hitler to do what, Caleb? Pardon me? Get rid of the existing government. And what was the government at the time called, Claire? Or who was leading that government? Or what was the governing party called? Josh?
The Y.
Yeah, the Weimar Republic, who signed the Treaty of Versailles. Was Germany ever actually invaded during World War I? No, so Hitler's going to view this as a stab in the back. This is an attempt to get rid of that government and what they'd done at the Treaty of Versailles. So this then would be a reaction or the aftermath of World War I. So that's one factor, perhaps, that we're looking at. Yes? No? Does that make sense? Thank you for nodding. Okay, so this second one here is a different date. So look at the date of this. So it's many years after the Munich Beer Hall Putsch. It's in 1932. So see who's in the picture, look at the audience, know what's going on throughout Germany in the 1920s and 1930s. And again, we're looking, not analyzing the picture per se, but what does the picture tell us with regards to what could be a factor, what's evident in this picture with regards to the Nazis coming to power? Because are the Nazis in power in 1932? No. It's going to be another year. So if you look at the picture, is there any opposition to what's going on?
No.
So there's no opposition to what's going on. Who refer to these people here just kind of, doesn't look like it's an actual parade per se of, you know, like a Canada Day parade where you have all kinds of different floats and all kinds of fun things going on. Candy's getting tossed, you're having a hoot and holler and good time. Not in this case here. Do you know who these group of people might be? And we haven't got there yet, but does anybody know what that group of people are? Okay, so those would be the stormtroopers. Those are like Hitler's kind of group of party members and associates who want to see Hitler come to power. So it's not a parade. We don't see any actual opposition. There's no one deterring this or stopping this from happening. But we know by 1932 many things had gone on in Germany. There's all kinds of issues. And actually, who are the Nazis kind of vying for power with the most in this time period? It's not an issue against Jews, but who's an issue against? The communists. And do we see any communist opposition here either? No. So this might then show that the Nazis are closer to becoming power, because this isn't successful, this Munich Beer Hall Putsch. And actually, what happens to Hitler in this event? After this event? He gets arrested, he gets him put in jail, and he writes his book. Do you know what his book's called? Mein Kampf. Yes, My Struggle. Does he actually write it himself, per se? No, he kind of, yeah, he dictates it, he originates it, someone writes it for him. So in this here I have, it's a contrasting to image one. This political instability, ring a bell here, because obviously if this group's going unopposed, there had been political instability for this group to exist in the first place with some of their extreme ideas and what's going on. Thank you for nodding your head, Akeem. So we're looking at political instability. Now flip to the next two pictures, or do the next two pictures, and that should give you an idea of what I'm looking for. So I'm looking for a phrase or a term or something to identify what's going on in the pictures as a factor in the Nazis coming to power. Okay, so flip it over, talk amongst yourselves. So analyze the photo, like analyze what this has. I did this last night, so go through it like this, read it together, look at the words that are in there, look what it's trying to tell something with regards to what we're looking for here. Nathan, you're not saying much. Okay, this is driving me nuts. Okay, so let's just do it together then. Kella, read me the first sentence there. Either from your sheet or off what's on here.
Hyperinflation.
Okay, hold on a second. We saw in that video 2 days ago what hyperinflation looked like in that Make Germany Pay video. When Germans wanted to go buy a loaf of bread, how do they carry the money to go buy that loaf of bread? Yes, in wheelbarrows. So hyperinflation is a situation where the price increases are so out of control that the concept of inflation itself is kind of meaningless. So it costs a fortune to buy a loaf of bread. So hyperinflation is going on. Keep going.
The trauma whose influence affected the behaviors of Germans of all classes long afterwards.
Okay, so all Germans are being affected by the hyperinflation that's going on in the 1920s, which is again an aftermath of their defeat in World War I. So all socioeconomic classes are suffering. It's not just one particular group. And if everybody's suffering together, they might start looking to extreme parties to help solve their problems. This doesn't tell us the date when this is actually published, but if it goes on, it says it added to the feeling in the more conservative sections of the population of world turned upside down. First by defeat in World War I, which is one of the themes we already identified. Then by the revolution, and now by economics. And it says the new German government of 1918. So for the very first time, Emma, in Germany in 1918, what does Germany have? They have a taste of this. Yeah, democracy. And again, that government was called what collectively? The governing party was the Weimar government by Hubert. Okay, Kate, you want to keep reading that for us?
It destroyed faith in the neutrality of the law as a social regulator between debtors and creditors, rich and poor, and the undermined notions of fairness and equity that the law is supposed to maintain.
And is it basically saying, Kate, that the Weimar government's doing a good job? No, they're not doing anything to deal with this problem, this situation. So collectively, maybe there's another party, a more extreme party, that can help solve these problems by whatever it is that they actually do economically to try to deal with the Great Depression that's going on, which follows the hyperinflation issue. So what do you think then could be a theme for this, Shannon? Or a theme as in the fact that the Nazis come to power, this is another reason that helps the Nazis be ushered into power. It's not a trick. So it's one word. And it rhymes with shake, money, money. What does it rhyme with it, but it kind of relates to it. Helper. I heard some of you actually talking about it earlier. So what is this factor? What is this whole thing's talking about an issue? And what is the issue? What's going down the drain? Money's going down the drain. So collective, this would be economics, perhaps, would it not?
Yeah.
Okay, it's kind of like pulling teeth here, Mr. Murphy. This isn't. Did you know that answer? Yes, of course it's economics. He's a math teacher. Okay, so write that down on the top of that piece of paper. So what are our three themes so far? What do we have? Drake, what are our three themes we've written down? Our three factors in Nazis coming to power.
Economics.
So economics, we just did economics to be a fact the Nazis rise to power. What else do we have?
I don't think we wrote down.
So can you write it down for me?
Yeah.
Okay, help them. What was the second factor we looked at that relates to this particular picture right here?
Politics.
So political instability. So actually we'll write this on the board here. So this factor here relates to aftermath of World War I. This relates to political instability. This one relates to economics. Okay, now press me. Talk quickly. Talk amongst yourselves. Figure out what you think's going on in this last picture. Look at the caption. Look at the people that are involved in it. Look at what they're wearing. Look at the expressions on their face. let's look at the picture first as we analyze the picture. So again, if you mark up the picture, I see nothing marked up there. I see nothing marked up there. Use the picture to your advantage. We'll talk about the picture first, and then we'll come with theme. So Emma's writing something down. Emma, what are you writing down?
All of them look pretty content.
All of them look pretty content. And who is all of them? Like collectively, who would you think all these people are?
This new government group, they all seem like pretty dignified guys and really nice.
Dignified, nice clothes. We see some military uniforms in there. So why don't you circle Hitler just for a giggle? Circle Hitler. Circle that stash. Actually, wasn't that interesting in the World Wars when we saw why it is he had a stash like that? Yeah, who knew?
Is that real?
I don't know. Good question. Now, to the left of Hitler, can anybody identify this character right here? We're going to see him in a minute in a video, but he's responsible. Sorry?
Little propaganda guy.
Yes, the little propaganda guy. This is Goebbels right here. Goebbels, Joseph Goebbels, Goebbels. And it's kind of hard to see in this, but this is a younger version of him because come the end of the war, it doesn't look like this. You remember who this is?
Himmler.
Not Himmler. I don't actually see Himmler on here. But this is Goering. Goerring. And what do we see in this guy's armband right here? Swastika. Whether these, so collectively this would be Hitler's inner circle, would it not? I don't know if anybody's read the book In the Garden of Beasts. Somebody read that book? It's a fantastic book that talks about the actual purging of the SA or the stormtroopers who we saw here, and this one here, and then Hitler wants people to like swear a personal oath of loyalty to him, and he wants to create and consolidate his power, so he gets rid of this group and this group, and the group that gets rid of him is this group here, and what collectively these uniforms represent the, I want to learn about an event called Night of the Long Knives. These represent the SS. And I looked up the actual definition of the SS last night. It just says an elite military unit of Nazi party. Their special police force. They're going to be led by, and someone mentioned it earlier, they're going to be led by Himmler. And a lot of these other characters I don't know. But again, they look, you know what they look like? Nazi VIPs. And whether they support Hitler or not, they're going to, if Hitler's in power, because the date of this in the bottom doesn't tell us, but soon after his appointment as Chancellor. And what year is he appointed Chancellor again?
1933.
So 1933. So in terms of Nazis' rise to power, they're basically in power now. So they've consolidated their power and they come to power in January 1933. These people are all going to be obedient whether they want to be or not. It's kind of like officially the Nazis are in power. So as a heading or a headline, this is kind of the culmination of all of them. This would be the Nazis' takeover of power. And does it tell us on the caption? It doesn't tell us, but this would be 1933. And actually, while we're here, let's put the dates that are quasi-associated with each of these four topics. This political instability picture, it already told us what year that was, and what year was it? 1932. The Munich Beer Hall, which what year is that? 1923. And then economics, there's two different issues with economics. First is the 1920s. In the 1920s, that whole issue, if you want to go buy a loaf of bread and you need a wheelbarrow full of money, that's called
Inflation.
hyperinflation, Josh, speaking of hyperinflation. And then, that's how you spell it, hyperinflation. Yeah, I did. And in the 30s, we're going to have the Great Depression. So hyperinflation of the 20s, and then the Great Depression of the 30s. So this is a time period we're talking about, but this kind of takes us full circle. This is the time period we're talking about. We're talking about the aftermath of World War I, which is actually 1919 and thereafter, to when the Nazis actually come to power in 1933. Okay. So now I'm going to show you a clip from the video itself. The video is called The Nazi Path to Genocide. It takes place from 1919 till the Nazis come to power and then thereafter. But we're going to look at a specific time period, 1918 to 1933. It's only about 9 minutes. I'm going to give you the captions that go along, or the narration that goes along with it, so you can follow along, because at the end we're going to do something else with this as well. We're going to add to these factors. So as I cue this up, I'm going to hand out this sheet. This is the narration, so you can follow along with the narration and the images at the same time. If you want to come back here, Nathan, from Richie's sister, give her. You feeling better, by the way?
Yeah.
What have you been? How was it? So as we watch this video, I'd like you to, where's my remote? I would like you to pay attention to the 4 factors and give you a bit more insight into the 4 factors, and we'll talk about this in a minute, and we're going to add to these boxes that we have on here of sort of like subheadings within these topics, which are factors when Nazis come into power.
Parent. The humiliation of Germany's defeat and the peace settlement that followed in 1919 would play an important role in the rise of Nazism and the coming of a Second World War just 20 years later. What shocked so many in Germany about the treaty signed near Paris at the Palace of Versailles was that the victors dictated a future in which Germany was deprived of any significant military power. Germany's territory was reduced by 13%. Germany was forced to accept full responsibility for starting the war and to pay heavy reparations. To many, including 30-year-old former Army Corporal Adolf Hitler, it seemed the country had been stabbed in the back, betrayed by subversives at home and by the government who accepted the armistice. In fact, the German military had quietly sought an end to the war it could no longer win in 1918. It cannot be that 2 million Germans should have fallen in vain, Adolf Hitler later wrote. We demand vengeance. Many veterans and other citizens struggled to understand Germany's defeat and the uncertain future. Troops left the bloody battlefields and returned to a bewildering society. A new and unfamiliar democratic form of government, the Weimar Republic, replaced the authoritarian empire and immediately faced daunting challenges.
Okay, so let's pause this for a second and jot down on that piece of paper with the first image. Because we haven't got to the beer hall push yet, but some of the key words and some of the things that we saw and some of the things we talked about. One time. I'll pick it up, Sean. So what does the last line say there, Caleb? Yeah. Well, we're talking about the first paragraph, the factor of World War I, the aftermath. What does the first line say, or the last line?
The new and unfamiliar democratic form of government, the Weimar Republic, replacing authoritarian empire and really faced daunting challenge.
Yeah, so there's a daunting challenge post World War I. So what are some of the words that are used in some of the images we see in there which show us, Dawson, you awake, buddy? What are some of the words that were used in there to describe what happened at Treaty of Versailles?
Me?
Sure.
Wait, what? I didn't hear it.
What are some of the words or what are some of the things that we saw in there that describe how Germany viewed the Treaty of Versailles?
Oh, didn't like it, for sure.
They didn't like it. Well, it goes beyond that. Jared.
Betrayed.
So we have words like betrayal. What else do we have? Yes.
Vengeance.
And going to seek vengeance. And is the Weimar government seeking vengeance?
No.
No, who will on their behalf? Who promises it in the 1920s? Actually, it says on there, right, 1918, you wrote, it cannot be that 2 million Germans should have fallen in vain. That's Hitler. So Hitler's going to seek vengeance on behalf of all Germans. And we're actually to see Hitler kind of espouse a strong sense of the biggest cause of war in the 20th century is what is it? Right, so there's going to be some angry nationalism because people are angry. So this, in combination with a bunch of other factors, are going to take Germany from a democratic, the start of democracy, into the authoritarian regime of Hitler. What are two other words that were mentioned there and we saw in the context of what's going on?
Unfair.
Well, unfair, sure, but stronger words. So dictated. And I heard shock and deprived. So you should start to see that again that this is a fairly significant factor in what's going to play out in the Nazis coming to power. They can refer back to the Treaty of Versailles and how it was unfair and how it was dictated and how they, because we know they had no choice. Justin, haven't said much this morning. What are the two things that Germany would have faced had they not signed the Treaty of Versailles? Quickly, because I'm going to press play.
They didn't sign it?
Yes. An invasion and a continuation of the war in Germany has never actually invaded. What else were they going to face? I want to see this in 1962 with the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Naval blockade.
Thank you very much. Naval blockade.
Thousands of Germans waited in lines for work and food in the early 1920s. Middle-class savings were wiped out as severe inflation left the currency worthless. Some burned it for fuel. Economic conditions stabilized for a few years, then the worldwide depression hit in 1929. The German banking system collapsed, and by 1930, unemployment skyrocketed to 22%. In a country plagued by joblessness, embittered by loss of territory, and demoralized by ineffective government, political demonstrations frequently turned violent. Many political parties had their own paramilitary units to attack opponents and intimidate voters. In 1932, 99 people were killed in the streets in 1 month. Right-wing propaganda and demonstrations played on fears of a communist revolution spreading from the Soviet Union.
And a communist revolution, what's a basic premise of communism? It's the class issue. And does communism embrace capitalism? No, so it'll be about, if there's a communist revolution, which we haven't talked about yet in Russia, then perhaps this is going to end up coming to Germany as a result of economics. So the video does a good job of explaining these two things. It talks about the problem of hyperinflation, and it talks about, okay, that's over with now we have the problems of the Great Depression. So what are a couple other things that we can add to this from what you just saw? Yes?
Fear of communism.
Yes, the fear of communism. Because of this and because of this, there's a fear of communism. And during this economic crisis of the 20s and 30s, it talks about, and it almost leads us into our next factor. And what is the third factor that we're talking about here? Right. So, fear of communism talks about riots, it talks about frequent demonstrations, each of these different political parties has their own paramilitary units and so on. So the fear of communism because of hyperinflation and Great Depression almost kind of ties in with political instability, or actually does tie in with political instability. So as we look at the next one, use both the sheet and the video to kind of pull out some things to help us add to this chart that we have going on.
Social problems emerged from the impact of rapid industrialization and the growth of cities. Standards of behavior were changing. Crime was on the rise. Sexual norms were in flux. For the first time, women were working outside the home in large numbers, and the new constitution gave women the right to vote. Germany's fledgling democracy was profoundly tested by the crumbling of old values and fears of what might come next. Adolf Hitler had been undisputed leader of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, known as Nazis, since 1921. In 1923, he was imprisoned for trying to overthrow the government. His trial brought him fame and followers. He used the jail time to dictate his political ideas in a book, Mein Kampf, My Struggle. Hitler's ideological goals included territorial expansion, consolidation of a racially pure state, the elimination of the European Jews and other perceived enemies of Germany. He served only a short jail sentence, and after the ban was lifted on his National Socialist Party, Hitler and his followers rejoined the battle in the streets and in the countryside. The Nazi Party recruited, organized, and produced a newspaper to spread its message. While downplaying more extreme Nazi goals, they offered simple solutions to Germany's problems, exploiting people's fears, frustrations, and hopes. In the early 1930s, the frequency of elections was dizzying. So was the number of parties and splinter groups vying for votes. Hitler proved to be a charismatic campaigner and used the latest technology to reach people. The Nazi Party gained broad support, including many in the middle class, intellectuals, civil servants, students, professionals, shopkeepers and clerks ruined by the Depression. But the Nazis never received more than 38% of the vote in a free national election. No party was able to win a clear majority, and without political consensus, successive governments could not effectively govern the nation.
Okay, so this is almost like a math equation, Mr. Murphy. I'm seeing A plus B plus C is going to equal D. So we could almost call this A, plus B plus C equals D squared, pi r4, or whatever you call it. Shannon, there's all kinds of political instability. So obviously Germans are not satisfied with the governing party in the time period. So the aftermath of World War I, the governing party was who? Collectively, who is it? The Weimar government. That is fantastic printing on my part. The Weimar government is not satisfying, so you have all kinds of splinter groups. The second last line there reads, no party was able to win a clear majority. So in this time period, the 20s and the early 1930s, no party could win a clear majority. So there's, what word could I use here to describe that? Help me. Sorry? Can somebody think of a word to describe the instability that's going on aside from the political instability? I guess we could just use that word. Sure, help me. Instability. So this would be squared, Mr. Murphy, because we have instability here and we got instability here. There's instability. People aren't satisfied. And then what does Hitler offer people? Well, I guess he offers them hope. Thank you. So he offers, the Nazis offer hope.
Jobs.
Does it say jobs? It alludes to something. Simple solutions to complex problems. This is a complicated problem. This is a complicated problem. He offers simple solutions to these complicated problems. Last one. So now A plus B plus C is going to equal D. And D is the Nazis actually coming to power, consolidating power, and we're going to see some reference to some of Hitler's henchmen and what they're actually going to do.
Adolf Hitler was not elected to office, and he did not have to seize power. He was offered a deal, just as the Nazis started to lose votes.
That's a big year. Big year. Ferg, that's a big year. Thank you for nodding.
In January 1933, when the old war hero, President Paul von Hindenburg, invited Hitler to serve as chancellor in a coalition government, the Nazis could hardly believe their luck.
So when the Nazis appointed for themselves and just themselves, what does a coalition mean, Natalie?
It's no government wins, so they have to form one every.
Like a combination government. And Hitler will soon take care of that. But this is, he actually comes to power as part of a coalition government.
The Nazis were revolutionaries who wanted to radically transform Germany. The conservative politicians in the new cabinet didn't like or trust Hitler, but they liked democracy even less, and they saw the leftist parties as a bigger threat. They reached out to the Nazis to help build a majority in parliament. They were confident they could control Hitler. 1 month later, when arson gutted the German parliament building, Hitler and his nationalist coalition partners seized their chance. Exploiting widespread fears of a communist uprising, they blamed communists for the fire and declared emergency rule. President Hindenburg signed a decree that suspended all basic civil rights and constitutional protections, providing the basis for arbitrary police actions. The new government's first targets were political opponents. Under the emergency decree, they could be terrorized, beaten, and held indefinitely. Leaders of trade unions and opposition parties were arrested. German authorities sent thousands, including leftist members of parliament, to newly established concentration camps. Despite Nazi terror and brutal suppression of their opponents, many German citizens willingly accepted or actively supported these extreme measures in favor of order and security. Many Germans felt a new hope and confidence in the future of their country, with the prospect of a bold, young, charismatic leader. Nazi propaganda chief Joseph Goebbels planned to win over those who were still unconvinced.
So we see him in that picture, the last picture of the Nazis' consolidation of power. That's Goebbels, propaganda minister.
Eine gute Regierung ohne Propaganda kann ebenso wenig bestehen wie eine gute Propaganda ohne eine gute Regierung.
Hitler spoke to the SA, his army of stormtroopers.
Deutschland ist nun erwacht. Die Macht haben wir nun in Deutschland gewonnen. Nun gilt es, das deutsche Volk zu gewinnen.
Okay, so the next class, what we're going to do is we're going to build on the ideas, these factors that we have here, the factors. Friday, this is the second half of the lesson, so we ended with this. We watched this film. From this film, we tried to gauge a deep understanding of some of the causes or factors in the rise of the Nazi Party. Now, Mr. Murphy said I had horrendous writing. Dayton's not here, it doesn't surprise me, but right here we have the categories of the topics that we're looking at that were in the video to emphasize the rise of the Nazi Party to power. And on your desk, what I've done is I've made us a quadrant sheet like that. So we can all take this out. There's an extra Coke there, just hold on. Okay, so you have this sheet out. I would like us, and part of the fact, I actually didn't do this on purpose, but part of the reason I have such bad handwriting is it forces you to focus on what I'm actually saying. So I'd like us all to copy down in these boxes what I have written down here for aftermath of World War I. What the hell? So the top left-hand corner, and this is a way of reviewing what we looked at so far. With regards to this picture in the Munich beer hall putsch, this is what we came up with together. This is a daunting challenge. So after World War I, it was a daunting challenge for the Weimar government to deal with what was seen as a betrayal in the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. That says betrayal. How was the game anyway, Sean?
We won 49-8.
You scored a touchdown?
No.
Did you? Attaboy. We underlined seek revenge. This was in the video and in the video sheet itself. And the Treaty of Versailles led to a strong sense of angry nationalism amongst the Germans. Hence the event we looked at anyway, which is the Munich beer hall putsch, which was unsuccessful. Many Germans were shocked. It was a dictated peace, and Germany was deprived. So once you have those copied down, I'm actually going to erase this because we're going to come back to this at the end after we've done a further analysis to get even more insight into this particular topic, because we've only kind of scratched the surface by looking at the video and looking at one picture. Good, so you left some room. So I'm going to erase this one now, and when we do our one at the end, I'll print really pretty so you can all read it. Goodbye. See ya. And actually I'll take this off too because we already have that on your quadrant. Factor 2 is this image here. This is taken in 1932 where we see stormtroopers marching to the street unopposed. This reflects political instability. Because they're allowed to do this in the first place, I can't even read my own writing. This says, Weimar government, instability. Okay, I guess there's instability. We talked about this on Friday because that if there was stability, you wouldn't have a paramilitary organization walking around the streets. There are other political parties that also have their groups and their organizations. We don't see any evidence of them here. So we have Weimar government, again, to emphasize the government who was in power. Barely in power, because 32. Because when does Hitler come to power? 33. Thank you very much, 33. Instability. And because the political instability is going on, the Nazis are offering hope. And the video, does it say it here already? They're offering simple solutions to complex problems. Okay, the economy is a problem, the political instability is a problem, the hatred from Treaty of Versailles is a problem. The Nazis are offering hope to the people. In retrospect, would they think that? That's kind of a theoretical or a rhetorical question. So goodbye. Political instability. That's what we gained from this picture, or we sort of gained. Okay? And I put the math equation on there for Mr. Murphy. He really liked that. Factor 3, economics. We read this text from Richard Evans, and I talked to you about hyperinflation. And we're going to look at that again a bit later on today if one of the documents you choose. So you got hyperinflation of the 20s and the Great Depression of the 30s. And both of these create a fear of communism. We haven't dealt with communism yet. We're going to when we look at the Russian Revolution. The image actually in this next picture down here, I don't see any communists. It's like pictures of businessmen who are capitalists who would also fear communism. So two issues in economics. The hyperinflation of the 20s and the Great Depression of the 1930s. The Nazis are offering simple solutions to try to deal with these problems. One of which, by the way, would be what? If we can think ahead. Exactly. Militarism and going against the Treaty of Versailles. We talked about what was the standing army allowed to be?
100,000.
100,000. Okay, so they're going to defy that. That territory between Germany's here, France is here, this territory right here is going to be militarized, demilitarized.
Rhineland.
The Rhineland, very good, and various other factors that he will start to defy the Treaty of Versailles and start to hope with the economic factors. And then lastly, we saw this picture of Hitler and a bunch of his buddies and businessmen and SS members, SA members. And this is the Nazis actually taking over power in 1933. So they take over power, Nick, but they don't actually consolidate power. In subsequent years, they do things to consolidate power. I mentioned that book in the Garden of Beasts. And that event in the Garden of Beasts, that book culminates with the Night of the Long Knives. We'll look at a bit later on, where all Nazi officials swear a personal oath of loyalty to Hitler, and he creates fear amongst the ranks in order to have everybody's undivided loyalty. So the only thing we have here is Nazis take over power. So it's complete. 1919, Treaty of Versailles. 1933, Nazis take over power. So save that quadrant sheet because we're going to come back to that. So in the same groups we had before, this is what we're going to do next. I'm going to explain this slowly to make sure you understand. So using the document set provided, there's 4 document sets because we have 4 factors. These 4 factors match exactly what we have right here. So these 4 factors. You're going to analyze the photos and documents in more depth than we did in step 1. In step 1, we just had one factor for each, or one image for each. So I would discuss together, then each student, so there's going to be 4 of you at the table or 3 of you at the table, you're all going to write down in the document analysis sheet, you're all going to write your answers in here collectively. So you talk about it, as you're talking about it, you'll write it down. Now if you want to take a look at this sheet, holy sheet, there's a lot of sheets. Yes, look at this one here. Some of these actual things we're asking you for, depending on which document you look at, might not apply. You can just put NA for non-applicable. But some of them do. So for example, describe the clothing. Well, maybe the one you're looking at doesn't have clothing in, so it's not available. Describe objects in the photograph. Well, maybe there aren't objects. Approximate people and so on. So some things will apply, some things won't, but this will help, as you discuss, to jot things down on here, because we're going to rediscuss these factors at the end. Okay, so again, discuss together. Each student fill out the graphic organizer for whichever document your group chooses to focus on. Debate. When I hand you the booklets of 4, do you talk about all 4?
Within your group, yeah.
Will you peruse them quickly, and then how many do you focus on?
1.
Attaboy. Okay, you just focus on 1. So again, peruse all the documents in your document packet. Choose one of the 4 to do a thorough analysis. Do not do the same document we did in step 1. These are the step 1 pictures right here. We've already done this. We understand what these are. So in essence, you have 4 in your packet, but you have 3 to choose from. Yeah? You only have 8 minutes to complete your analysis document set before you pass it on. So like you will have document set 1, which relates to the aftermath of World War I. You guys will have economics, you guys have political instability, and then you will have the rise to power, and then we'll switch, like that Will Smith song. And we'll switch it around, 8 minutes, switch it around, 8 minutes, switch it around, done. What's 8 times 4?
42.
Thank you, 32. No, Josh is not 23. At the end of the 4-factor document analysis, you will have 4 graphic organizers filled out to help you in your wrap-up class discussion. So there are 4 things to fill out in this sheet. So they're all labeled for you. The first one is factor 1, which these 2 groups will have, factor 2, and so on. What new information you did learn from talking about this particular document with regards to the 4 factors that led to the Nazi rise of power, we are going to then add to this quadrant that we just reviewed right now. So I think I've explained it clearly. Callie, any questions? Good. Okay, so I'm going to hand these out, and we have about 8 minutes. Okay, don't touch. Easy, don't touch. Okay, you guys are going to do this one, so pick. Look at all of them, then figure out which one you're going to do from here. Talk collectively amongst yourselves. Let's see.
Oh, no. Let's do a picture. It's easier to see your
No, it doesn't matter. What do we have?
Okay, the 3 of you, rock stars, are doing economics. So look through the pictures, pick one of them.
So then we basically have
There's like 2. I know. There's one that's back. This one?
Okay, economics, right there. Take one. You got some economics, thank you. Anais. Save the best for last, Connor. Nazi takeover of power? Yes.
Okay, which one are we doing? This one or like the same sheet?
Okay, so you have 8 minutes to start talking. You all gonna fill out the graphic organizer?
Yeah, it's definitely 75.
See?
Estimated age.
Wait, what's the time?
There's a lot of
One quick thing here. I think this sheet here release the text, but you do not want to.
Yeah. I should say.
No, it's a family.
So which one are you guys looking at? Political instability? So this picture here. Look what I've done. Yeah, look what you can espouse. You can write over on this too. You can copy things out like how many swastikas are on there, how old do these kids look like, potential date, why women are involved.
They're protesting.
It's like 5, 6.
Are they supporting
Some of the
Yes, and using the picture, what it is, what the graph's saying. Army later, by the way, that's why is in there. 15 kind of thing.
the men?
I really only see their shirts, kind of.
I think they're all guys, right?
You can't really see.
I don't think we want when we're doing the there's more men. Just let the chance how far the gates.
White shirt. What? Like traditional German.
Yes, the thing, how
I'm just going more.
Like traditional.
Hey, it's kind of clothing. You can't wear intelligent when they're just not.
And look at the text, it says you want to say they're happy.
Oh, numbers.
Can you read your?
Adolf Hitler, offers work and bread, vote for this too, whatever that
I think one of them in the background.
means. Stone.
How do they fall? Crazy, loopy writing with those.
Okay, that's not straight.
Well, it's just like, it's German. No, it does not. And like, you know what the biggest thing is?
That's more like straight. Yeah.
Do we have $1,000 bill in this country? No. No? The biggest is 100? Okay, like 4 minutes, you gotta hurry.
You're standing there.
And wash is rather detailed. I think really the one side are on. I'm pretty sure it's
The story on both.
Adolf Hitler offers like makes work and bread. Vote for. I don't know what it says this to. Yeah, could be.
Early 30s, actually it tells us the date, does it not? Morning. It says right there.
That's the like, oh, actually says that though.
How's that cater, Jason?
Provide work and bread, like, just two.
Okay, I'm hearing lots of dialogue, which is fantastic. Unlike Friday when, well, don't want to go there. Read what? Yeah, exactly. This is
That's what like Nazi flag.
what topic are you?
Yeah, it's like
We don't actually know the influence. There's actually, and this one's interesting because there's no mention of who. There's no, and here, who's that? I know, but who were they mad at in this picture? The Jews, nothing to do with the Weimar Republic. They're the ones who signed the treaty.
This could be before he was.
If it was in the 20s, they wouldn't have.
probably like the early 30s.
Okay, we're gonna have a class discussion about all these towards the end. 1 more minute, then we're gonna pass them along. So either you have like a kind of like a funky like
Goes with the news.
you got some like gangster on there. Let them all know swears.
I think I have like 6, 7, 8. Early fall or middle.
When I pass these over, set it for 8 minutes. When I set them, when we start the next one, set it for 8 minutes. Yeah, not yet, no. Okay, whether you're finished or not, just saying like, because I'm a gentleman, I'll take yours, Connor, and yours, and I'll pass them over there, and then you guys pass yours over. And make sure when you're filling out this quadrant, he put factor 1, political instability. Actually, factor 1 is, just to stick with what we're doing, factor 1 is the aftermath of World War I. So just know your topic on here doesn't really matter.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, hit me. Thank you. Thank you. You keep your graphic organizer, but I'm going to move these over. This goes here. This goes here. Thank you. This goes here. Good teamwork, Killian. Way to go. This goes here. This goes here. This goes here. Hey, you get one? This back. Akeem the Dream's going to set his timer for 8 minutes. Hit it.
Oh, that's C. What number is this?
Who's got factor 1? If you decide to do this one, it's just text, there's a different sheet for you right here. And this text is actually probably the easiest to analyze. So why don't you just do this one here, if you want to try this one. Because this text, you can read it and break it down kind of sentence by sentence. So there's a different sheet, this one here.
I was thinking
You're on it. Maybe read sentence by sentence. Think about who's saying it, what they're saying, why they'd be saying that, positive bias, negative bias, anger.
Is it?
That's not like a normal sign, that is like a Nazi fight. $10 million mark.
That's the name.
Something, but there's a reference to women here. Most these posters here. Prior, the Weimar
What year? There must be a year on that.
Away with the Jewish rest.
What's your? Yeah.
That's primary.
Yeah, nice work, awesome.
Do they change? I wonder if they changed.
Like after lost role. It says right there.
I think that's annoying. We're supposed to be using this, so.
January.
No, that's for, something different, you can still use this because it's kind of an image, but there's wording below it.
Okay.
But there's one that was all text,
Yeah.
and this wouldn't have applied.
Yeah.
Which one's the?
Yeah.
Which one's the?
Oh, no, this is number.
What is that showing? Like, is that?
Have you guys actually read it?
Is that what it's showing?
Zero power.
Yeah, a lot of these.
But I guess that was when Hexy Glacier. So it was like, that would have been able to use like, to be.
Actually, you're kind of right, but you get recap.
There's also the we have to pick. Okay. I don't think
Yeah.
we should do the big announcement.
Which represents unity. Now we're all the same, now we're all.
Yeah.
Yeah, because people were still angry.
What's Bolshevism? Done, it's finished. Can you not be on your phone? Watch that. What do you guys got here? Calendar don't work? Yeah.
I said, because treat you for psychology.
Yeah.
Richie's sister, what do you got to add to that group there? What do you have to add to that group there? Nothing? We got 2 minutes left, I bet we can find something. Who's speaking in that one?
No, this is
Your mom like, who?
number 4. Yeah.
Sure, that's like
Why do you
really,
think
yeah,
this?
And this is 1918?
Oh, no.
So is the war officially over in 1918? Is it about to be?
Yes.
Yes, it's about to be. And who's he saying that, who's he saying worked with zeal, determination, and purpose to destroy everything?
I'm putting down like someplace where you can find it.
What's right here?
Have a message.
They and the soldiers' council. So he's saying that despite the fact that all these soldiers worked really, really hard, facing government officials who are going to be the Weimar government, is destroying everything that they fought for. Yes? No?
This one guy is like so stupid.
And he says attacks the new government. Who is the new government? Do you know who leads the new government? Well, the new government of 1918 is not Hitler's government. Thank you very much. He bared his government. Said, all we lived for, all that we have led for long 4 years to maintain was gone. They're never even invaded. They have to surrender? Whatever your elbow.
Sure.
Keep we good? Yeah. Okay, perfect. If I knew the Will Smith lyrics, I'd sing it. If I'd switch,
Did he?
hey, switch, pass it over, pass it over.
His pleasure.
So you should have a third factor, pass it over.
This is number 1.
Yeah.
I think you grabbed it.
Oh, dang.
Shield the coffee. Okay, so.
Have you had this one yet?
Yes.
Have you guys had economic yet? Keep 8 minutes. You guys have this one?
I would say that one. No, it's A or B. I would say that one.
What are you choosing for? What topic?
16 slider.
That's 3.
16 slider. This one, I love this one right here.
This is a retro. Exactly.
This is kind of reminiscent of Samoani's
They must be happy they're all doing it.
There's no leaves on the trees.
I put
It's actually a lot of military applications. A lot of
what do you call that sign? What are the people doing? Does that sign have a name or no?
Who are they not blaming in this picture? They're not blaming the Nazis, but who are they?
No, it's Hitler's in the car. It's
And
driving.
they're not blaming the Walmart government.
Yeah. What should we say? Are there objects in the car?
Yeah, it's like a game.
Car.
Photograph you're taking.
Yeah, it looks like
Looks like you just go like out of the game. Just in like a courtyard or something.
Buildings.
Maybe just like go to the
Yes. Katie, what's time?
Okay, 10 million mark.
Like in the square.
Oh, leaving the
4 minutes, lots of time to do the thorough analysis, Joshua.
Did you say outside of the Chancellor?
Would you like a new pencil? That's like a wet
Middle day, nighttime. It's hard to tell.
No, probably not, but I drank like 3 parts fast. That's definitely not good.
I know.
There's like a German.
Yeah, thoughts?
Early 30s and German.
It's not, I wouldn't say it's not, actually, someone pointed this out.
That is number 2.
Maybe this is like a soup kitchen or a relief agency, like they're waiting outside, show relief, I don't know, relief or soup.
Parties, trying to stop power.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking, well, it's hard to tell from the date. Yeah, cause they actually all look very useful.
And how much?
But this is showing how the increases, outpatient increases, so I'm assuming it's past it, because I compare it to statistic. It's a stock market. Okay, let's finish that, whatever you're finished on, and we'll just pass the last one off.
It's like afternoon.
Yeah.
Good?
Yeah.
Have you guys had political instability yet? You have?
Well, you guys have number 4.
Literally just hearing one of his voices together and something from one of his voices together and he was like
Where's Nazi takeover car? I need that one. You guys have Aftermath World War I?
Yeah, we need 4
No, it's Nazi takeover, which is one? Nazi takeover, here we go. You guys have, what do you guys not that?
Number 3. So.
Number 3, economics. Okay, and then we need a 4. Number 2, here's number 2. Again. What do you need? 4. Who needs 1 or 3?
This one.
Okay, which ones do you need?
4.
You need 4? 4?
Oh, it's a voting.
And it's
4. What do you need?
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, last one. Make, save the best for last. Ever just got a new one? What do you need? 4?
He never won. Yeah. Yeah, we're doing it.
1 right here. Who wants 1?
Yeah.
For this one here, why don't you try something different? Get 1 right here. And then this. Okay, last 8 minutes, I'm getting a headache.
200.
It's a lot.
What is happening?
I think it's
What do you say about tennis? This is actually a picture, and this is the picture done.
Oh.
This.
They're all ages, I guess.
What does the poster say? Isn't it like
Well, yeah, it's unemployed, so like anyone 18 or 18 plus. What'd you say the number in people? A lot. In this movement, number of men or boys, I think they all look like
Yeah. I was finding like what they were on his hand before. That's what we got. Riding around town. It's got a facial expression.
And someone told me to point out, I didn't say this earlier, but this guy's smoking a pipe.
And this guy's
oh, I never realized that was a question. He's got the keyboard and
I'm all kind of math.
inside or out.
Yeah, frustrating.
I thought that was just like time of day, light on that.
People like, look a good way for something.
Yeah,
That's it.
not protest.
Yeah, like.
Waiting.
Time of year.
It does. I guess it's an object. It does.
Is that a street that they're on?
Yeah, I don't know what to put for objects. Like,
Put them building and they like
I guess happy dating.
windows.
Now you have to shows the support. What is
doesn't have to be like the aftermath.
How far are we now? We can finally actually do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and already it's like flooded by support because we're all sure.
Probably 30. No?
I should noon again. It's always noon. It's always noon too.
Okay.
That looks cold.
I don't know why. Or, no, sorry, that work thing.
Outside.
Yeah, residential neighborhood.
Nice, Jared, I like that wording.
They're not.
Oh, shit.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Well, can't really say anything about the
Like, didn't you know?
I like the tree analogy. My brain is sad. Okay, let's say 2 minutes left here. Conversation starting to die down, we're all focused. When your parents came here, do they stay with you or do they stay on the hotel? Do they have to pay to get in the game?
I'm saying.
No, they sit in those seats at the back or the top. Oh, nice. Nice. What are your bills due?
The dad's contract.
Okay, which company?
Oh, yes. It's just hip to this story. Yeah, he promoted his ideas.
Kind of same thing as the first one.
We had to do.
Yeah.
I just had to change one.
They also want to. Yeah, they did.
Okay, so we've all had access to all four documents, so let's just put our pants down for a second, just take a breather, okay? Deep breath. Jared's still going, it's kind of like Fast and Furious 7. Actually, I haven't seen it, but we had friends over yesterday, and their kids the same age as my kids, and they've watched Fast and Furious 7. Just saying, I'm a bit young. Because they're like 8 and 10. It's inappropriate. Jacob, you turn up the top light for me? Okay, we have 2 things left to do from this. One, we are going to talk about and add to our can you please get off your phone? Too much data.
Sorry.
Here, give it to me. Pass it up here like an assembly line. Pass it to Cal, who pass it to Akeem, who pass it to Adam, who pass it to Joshua, who pass it to myself. Thank Just the front light here. So we're gonna add to these quadrants. So get these quadrants out. We're gonna add a few pieces of information or content to help us better understand each of these factors in the Nazis coming to power. 1919, 1933. So you've all been exposed to different documents that relate this. So we're not going to relate this too long, but I'd like to spend about 5 minutes talking about things we can add into our quadrants for each of these particular factors. And then, as a way of conclusion, those same surveys that we filled out last week, sort of like a pre-survey, we're going to do a post-survey to kind of gauge our understanding of this topic after being taught it, or sort of a class. First, what can you tell me about factor 1? So wherever you have it in your graphic organizer, the aftermath of World War I. Further to what we had here, how can we add to understanding of how the Nazis came to power?
They were protesting the Jewish post.
Who's they?
Nazis.
Probably Nazi supporters, I guess, because nobody's really.
Yeah, so we see, we don't have a date on this, do we? But there's 20,000 National Socialists gathered to protest against the Treaty of Versailles. Yeah, and actually in that, who are they blaming?
I thought they were scapegoating the Jews.
Right, so we see a scapegoating of Jews, so 20,000 plus, demonstration. Date you're not here, but this is my best printing, that says 20,000 plus. So write this down in our quadrant. Demonstration versus Treaty of Versailles. And unlike this first image that we had here, which is the Munich beer hall putsch, where Hitler and his SA are blaming the Weimar government, and you told us already first, who are they blaming?
The Jewish.
They blame, that's an E, and they scapegoat Jews. And as we study this further, we'll see part of Hitler's rhetoric and part of his party platform is anti-Semitic hatred towards Jews. This goes along with what he would support. So tell me some of the characters of the Jews here in this particular one. So anybody who had this one who looked at document F that looks like this? So how are the Jews depicted here?
They're carrying signs.
Well, the Jews themselves are not carrying signs protesting themselves.
Okay. Yeah, they're a part of the big guy. They're
We'll look at Jewish scapegoats a bit later on, but on this particular picture, I don't speak German because it tells us what it says. Away with the Jewish press, lies, corruption, and rubbish. And there's a racial character of a Jew with a big nose in this particular picture. And actually in this, like this picture here, what do we not see in this picture? We see any sign of opposition? Thank you very much. There's no sign of opposition to this. So they're either passive bystanders or supporters. They're there watching this rally and they support this idea that they're going to blame the Jews for the Treaty of Versailles as something Hitler will use and manipulate in his rise to power. Okay, so some of you looked at that particular document. What about the text in document C, for example? Connor, thank you.
Like you would kind of feel like the German Nazis didn't really want a democracy. They kind of wanted like a leader that would like restore the country to where it was.
And what are you talking about? This particular document?
They
Document
said
C?
Germany was like a leaderless nation. Kind of
Okay,
like
so if they're saying leaderless, what are they saying about the Weimar government then?
just a weak kind of pushover government.
And this corresponds to some of the stuff we had earlier. Leaderless. So a leaderless government equals, this is putting blame again on the Treaty of Versailles. And who said that particular phrase, or who was,
German general.
yes, and why would he think this way? The key word there is the general. So,
Who's a Nazi supporter?
not necessarily even a Nazi supporter, because this is quite early. I think this one is in 1918. The war just ended. Yeah. Or you want me to move? Okay, I'm gonna yeah, he's just doing one of these. Nathan, help me. Well, Josh knows, we'll give Josh a second here. He's a German general saying we're elitist government. He claims the Weimar Republic for the armistice because this takes place in 1918. Do you not have this one, maybe?
Which one, sir? Opposed.
Josh,
Opposed Treaty of Versailles.
because why? What are two factors why you oppose the Treaty of Versailles as German general?
Because they took away
Who's they?
all the three powers.
So the big three at the Treaty of Versailles.
Took away or made Germany take all the blame for the war.
And who's he?
They reduced the army.
Yeah, reduced the army.
Yeah, because they basically, the Treaty of Versailles demilitarizes Germany. That's a demilitarize. That is not a C. That is a G. Demilitarizes Germany. Turn the lights on. But all the things that we're seeing with regards to Factor 1 are things that Hitler's going to use in his rise to power. This is 1918. We don't know when this other demonstration is, but they're probably still not protested the Treaty of Versailles in 1930. So these are things in the 1920s. Yes, they're unhappy with it, but in terms of outright protest, Blair, how are we doing? These are things Hitler's going to use. Okay, Factor 2. So looking at some of the documents, we looked at Factor 2. How can we add to our quadrant? What is Factor 2? In our quadrant, we have political instability. Someone tell me something to add for political instability.
Oh, there was
Josh, you're mumbling. Yes, Emma?
There's a lot of propaganda in the picture that we were looking at.
And which particular picture?
It was the one with the gentleman standing behind the fence next to the sign that was,
Oh, the kids or?
yeah, Hitler will provide working bread.
Okay, so we have propaganda, very much so, which is going to be a key, propaganda. And do you remember as propaganda minister, we saw right at the end of the film?
Goebbels.
Yep.
Goebbels.
Goebbels, very good. Propaganda will be a key in the Nazi rise. And what is the propaganda we see in that particular document? Or what did we see in that document? Yeah?
It was like a Nazi flag and the Nazi sort of together type thing.
We saw the Nazi flag. We also saw the Nazi banner.
Yeah.
And then we also saw that I'm not going to say sweet bike, but was that the one with the bike?
Yeah,
It had the Nazi swastika symbol look like in the front of the bike. So we see the swastika 3 times. Also in that particular one, I think on the right-hand side along the wall, there is reference to encouraging women and another group to vote. And I don't know this for sure, but prior to Germany being a democracy, I'm not sure what the status was or the eligibility of women to vote. So it's kind of like, we're having an election here. What's the date today? 20. So we're having an election October 19th, and we just watched attack ads in Social Studies 11 on Friday about parties arguing with each other. And they're casting the net as wide as they can. They're trying to win supporters from labor, from industry, from veteran, like the whole gamut. So it's like here, you're trying to open up who can vote and who would vote for you. So if you're giving and encouraging women to vote, and they hadn't been encouraged to vote one of the other parties, perhaps this is a way of Nazis to open up their party to different groups to voting. Does that make sense? Okay, tell me one more thing before I move on about Factor 2, which is whatever it is. Political instability. We all look at that one. There's other documents in there. What's something else? Political instability.
of the other document, or just which one of the other? It was ours.
Yeah.
Did everybody look at this particular one? Well, let me just share with you, or let Adam say something.
Say something. They're all standing obviously in a square.
And this tell us, it doesn't tell us, 1932. So Nazi propaganda be throughout, and by 1932, perhaps this propaganda is paying off because you're winning supporters. There's a rally. which is a key way to spread your message through a Nazi rally. You fill with supporters. In this case, Nazi supporters, and looks like they're all doing the Hail Hitler. I don't see Hitler in this picture. You can even see people in all the buildings and the windows looking on. So the Hail Hitler salute is obvious in this picture. Harmony, what do you have for economics? This one. I love this one. Did I tell you my stat about bread?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, tell me something from this. What does this imply?
It's the hyperinflation, you have to use that much just to buy it.
And it suggests that it's going to cost 10 million. Well, we don't know it says it's that much it costs a loaf of bread, but we saw that in the previous video. But a $10 million right mark or note, so $10 million currency, to assumably buy like normal staples of life. So this is extreme hyperinflation when you have a $10 million bill. To my knowledge, we only have $100 bills. One thing bigger than this country, maybe we do. Someone said we used to have 1,000. Okay, I went to Costco on the weekend to buy some bread. I did some math here. 3 loaves of bread for $7.99. I'm not sure why I have equals 125 times 3 loaves. But if you had $10 million, is that right? 10 million. That would equal 1,251,564 packs of 3 loaves of bread. So times this by 3 equals, is my math right? 3,754,692 loaves of bread that you could buy with 10 million marks, or dollars, if we convert that to our dollars. That's a lot of bread. But then, you couldn't buy this many loaves of bread, you could buy 1. I'm not sure if my math's right, but you kind of get the point. I should probably erase that in case that's wrong. So just pretend that you can buy a lot more bread. Anything else about currency that gives us insight into how the Nazis would use this to their advantage? Cal, I thought you had your hand up there. No? Did you look at this one? Anybody look at this one? Oh, Jared, what's going on?
Oh, I didn't look at that one.
Just tell me something.
Well, it kind of shows that all the people in Germany are really not doing too well. Like, there's a depression going on, nobody's really getting that ease.
It's not like one group's immune, like everybody's suffering. So there's a totality of suffering or of economic hardship. One of the other documents talked about how the Nazis would erase the issue of class, like trying to create unity. Yep.
Unemployment skyrocketing.
Yeah, and that's what this is telling us right here. So we have unemployment skyrocketing, and do you know from that particular document what year it peaks in? Which is perfect timing for Hitler. 32, and when does Hitler come to power?
33.
I'm going to solve this problem. We're at the unprecedented level of problem, and I'm going to solve the problem. Okay, and lastly, Natalie, do you have anything for me for the Nazi takeover of power?
We looked at the first picture.
This one?
Yeah, that one. They said it kind of makes it look like people are happy that he won. They're hopeful. They think he can bring them change. They need change and help bring it to them.
So he's bringing hope. There's happiness in this picture. When is this picture taken? Let's see, it takes just after his meeting with Hindenburg, probably, I'm assuming January 33 when he's appointed. The word in brackets there is supporters. And if you look at this, he's just leaving Hindenburg's estate or palace or whatever. Are the people there angry or happy?
Happy.
And what's the one thing in here that tells us happy? Actually, there's 2 things, 3 things that you can tell you they're happy. Butter chicken, what do you think? What do you think? What are 3 things in this picture that tell us that people are excited, they're happy, and they're supporters of Hitler?
They're doing the Nazi
So we have the Nazi salute, which is kind of a common thing we've seen. So there's one reason.
They're crowding like really close to the car to see their leader.
They're excited. Yeah, they're crowding the car. And how far is he out of the gates?
Like 5 feet.
He's 5 feet out. There's crowding. He's only 5 feet out of the palace or the house or whatever you want to call it. And, you can't even, and this picture might not tell the whole story. This wave of people might be even grander than what we see here, but it's cut off. And actually, it's kind of right. We don't see anything, but when Hitler's appointed to power, is he appointed as a sole leader? What? Yeah, there's a coalition. But does this picture give any indication of a coalition? No, it looks like these people totally support Hitler. And part of the reason Hindenburg appointed the coalition is possibly thinking that he could be curtailed by the other parties. So that was kind of like a whirlwind. Do you have anything else to add? Okay, so the last thing I want us to do, you probably don't remember the survey. There's a survey on your desk. It's the same one we filled out. Circle post survey. Think of the 4 things that we did in relation to the Nazis' rise to power. Think of those initial documents. What?
Yeah. So like, you know, so like we can get it so like
World War II test for Section 11.
we can get
Yes? Circle post. Not pre. We've already done the pre one.